What's up, guys? This is Zack Hample back with another long video for you by popular demand. And no, I'm not just talking about the one comment you can see on the bottom of the screen. Several weeks ago, I did a video where I talked about my favorite current player on every different Major League team. That video got more than 100,000 views and a ton of comments, including a bunch from people who, as you can see right here, were basically requesting and suggesting that I do another similar video talking about my all-time favorite players on all the different teams. So that's what we're getting into here. I've decided to break it up into two videos because I have so much to say. Even in two parts, each one is still gonna be long. And another way that I'm gonna change it up this time is that with the last one, I went through the teams alphabetically by team name. So we did the Angels, Astros, Athletics, and so on. But this time, as you can see, I've written out all the different team names on little slips of paper, and those slips are actually right here inside this hat. You can see what that looks like, okay? So I'm gonna mix this up like crazy. We're gonna churn it all up, and it's gonna be totally random. I'm just gonna start picking pieces of paper, and after I pick the first one, we're gonna jump right into it, and I start yapping about my favorite players. So, ready for it? Nothing in the hand. This is not rigged in any way. And the first one is gonna be the Mariners. That's a good one to start with because my favorite all-time Mariners player is really one of my all-time across Major League Baseball favorite players, and that would be Ichiro Suzuki. I remember seeing him on TV live, his first game in the major leagues in 2001. He crashed the scene, came over from Japan. He was so fast out of the batter's box. And I remember thinking, if this dude makes consistent contact and keeps the ball out of the air, the opposition is going to have a tough time getting him out. And just the way he kind of ran up and dragged his bat through the zone, he had an unorthodox style, to say the least. It almost didn't seem like anybody could succeed doing that, but man, oh man, did he succeed. He basically had 200 hits year after year after year. He broke George Sisler's single season hits record. That was huge. And, you know, he threw me 12 baseballs at stadiums over the years, and I snagged 25 of his batting practice home runs, including one at the Tokyo Dome during his very last series ever in the major leagues, early in the 2019 season when MLB opened up overseas. I was in San Francisco in 2007 at the All-Star game when Ichiro hit an inside the park home run. He was the MVP of that All-Star game. And a few years later in Philly, when Ichiro was on the Marlins, I saw him pitch in a major league game. And I was up close near the dugout. I took some photos. I even got some video, which maybe I'll post at some point. So just seeing him play and do so many amazing things. I was at Yankee Stadium when he got his 4,000th lifetime hit, including Japan and the major leagues. Of course, he's gotten over 3,000 hits just in the majors. Future first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. And I mean, he's just legendary beyond words. And then being up close to him at the Tokyo Dome after he retired, his very final appearance in the major leagues, I still get chills thinking about that. So Ichiro by far is my favorite Mariner. And with that, we will keep on moving. And next up will be the Blue Jays. So one thing you have to know that guides some of my selections is that I was a shortstop when I was growing up, playing in high school, summer ball, even in college a little bit, although in college they bumped me over to third base. I wasn't too happy with that. But anyway, I always looked up to Major League shortstops as a result. So my favorite Blue Jays player ever is a shortstop. I'm talking about Octavio Antonio Fernandez, aka Tony Fernandez from San Pedro de Macorís in the Dominican Republic. He was so damn smooth. He won 4 Gold Gloves. He was a 5-time All-Star, 17-year career, had more than 2,000 hits, and just really a pleasure to watch overall. Next up, we're gonna do, if I can grab just one. All right, we have the White Sox. Now again, my favorite White Sox player is really one of my all-time favorites, the Big Hurt, Frank Thomas. Where to begin? Well, I talked about Ichiro's consistency with 200 hits every year. I really do appreciate statistical consistency. And Frank Thomas had 7 consecutive seasons in which he had at least 100 runs, 100 RBIs, 100 walks, and batted at least 300, which is just, it's mind-boggling. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. He won 2 consecutive MVPs, he hit 500 home runs, and he was just like the gentle giant, really sweet, friendly guy. I was fortunate enough to get up close to him late in his career in Baltimore, and I got his autograph twice on a couple of ticket stubs. That was always my item of choice that I tried to get signed. I've done several videos actually about my signed ticket stub collection, but anyway, Frank Thomas, great dude. It's nice to see him still on TV now, offering analysis and sharing his love of the game. Next up, we have the Yankees. My favorite Yankee player was really a childhood hero. He was drafted in the 19th round. Donnie Baseball, Don Mattingly. So he was an amazing hitter. He won 3 Silver Sluggers. He was a 6-time All-Star, 9 Gold Gloves. He was an elite first baseman. And I loved that crazy porn stash that he had, back in the 80s. That was the style back then. I almost feel like it's making a comeback now, maybe. Should I grow a mustache? But anyway, it's a shame that back injuries derailed his career. He finished playing in 1995, and of course the Yankees went on their magical dynasty run after that, so Mattingly never won a ring. But just so many memories of Donnie Baseball. I remember when he tied the record by hitting a home run in 8 consecutive games, and I think there was a season when he hit, was it 5 Grand Slams in one season? Just absolute stud of a player. Next up is the Pirates. Shout out to Ralph Kiner, but my favorite Pirates player of all time is Tony Womack. The reason? Well, he and I both went to the same small college. It's called Guilford College. It's in Greensboro, North Carolina, Division III. I don't think you see too many Division III athletes end up playing in the Major League Baseball All-Star game, but Tony Womack did. Now, he is considerably older than me, so we were not in school together at the same time, but when I was on the team, he would come and work out with us during fall ball. And I remember, turning double plays with him in practice because I was, a left side of the field infielder and he was a second baseman. In an inter-squad game one time, I smoked a rocket of a line drive, a low line drive that was ticketed toward the gap in right center. Tony Womack was playing second base, unfortunately, and I've never seen a human being jump so high in person. I think he must have had like a 4-foot vertical leap. That ball was like 10, 11 feet off the ground, and he jumped up and just picked it out of midair, and I was like, idiot, don't hit the ball to the major leaguer. But in 1997, he was an all-star, and that was the first of 3 consecutive seasons that he led the National League in stolen bases. That said, he was, not known for his power. He was a pretty small guy, lefty slap hitter. But one more story from Guilford College. I saw him take batting practice out there on the field, in the cage. We were all standing around. He had the quickest hands I've ever seen. Unbelievable bat speed. It almost defied the laws of physics. He was launching home runs, not just over the fence in right field, but over the trees beyond the right field fence. And again, this is a guy that was a slap hitter, and these were not brand new Major League Baseballs. These were crappy, worn out Division III practice balls. That was kind of the time when I realized, I don't think I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player because, if a little guy like that can hit bombs and I'm practically bigger than he is and I can't, not a good sign. But just really inspiring. In 2011, when the All-Star game was in Phoenix at FanFest, because Tony Womack ended up playing for the D-backs, won a World Series with them in 2001. that was great to see. So 10 years later in 2011, he was at FanFest. I caught up with him, got my picture taken with him. We chatted a bit about the good old days in Guilford. And I mean, Tony Womack, he's the man. Next up, wait, we have a few that are poking out of the hat. Okay, so next up, we have, who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? It's gonna be the Padres. So I have a great personal connection to my favorite Padre of all time, one of the most fun players of all time. I am talking about Heath Bell. Now, my personal story with Heath begins back in New York. He came up with the Mets. He was one of those quadruple A guys who couldn't quite stick around, but he was out there enough that he got to recognize me during batting practice. I was always out there early shouting for baseballs and trying to interact with the players. Some guys got annoyed with me, but Heath was the opposite. He thought it was kind of cool and came over to chat with me one time back in 2005, and he was like, man, what do you do with all these baseballs? We had a cool conversation, and we ended up playing catch, where I was in the stands, he was on the field, crouching down, giving signs, giving a target, calling balls and strikes. And he remembered me after he left the Mets. Wherever he went, I'd try to see him on the road or when he came back and played in New York, and I'd give him a shout. He was super friendly. He gave me his batting practice cap in San Diego eventually. He saved me some special baseballs from the All-Star game in 2009. That's right, the All-Star game, okay? Now, he was with the Padres. He was the setup man for Trevor Hoffman, okay, in 2008. Heath Bell pitched so well that when Trevor Hoffman left the Padres, they made Heath Bell the closer. So guess what happened in 2009? Boom, saved 42 games. The next year, 2010, 47 saves, 1.93 ERA. 2011, 43 more saves. He made the All-Star team all 3 of those seasons. And I think a lot of people forget just how great he was. Because, he was like a big, goofy guy, and he struggled a bit at the end of his career, but for a while, he was lights out and just super nice to me all along the way. We exchanged info. I've hung out with him in San Diego near his home. We played catch in the street. We road tripped together to the World Series out in Los Angeles in 2017. And, I just can't say enough nice things about Heath Bell. And in fact, he has some nice things to say about me.
Hey, Zack, it's Heath Bell from San Diego. I just want to say thanks for having me on this video. And when we get a chance, next time we'll play some catch on the field like we did back in Shea Stadium. So take care, buddy. Love you.
That is one cool dude. So Heath actually has a somewhat new podcast where he talks all about the Padres and other major league teams and his experiences in pro ball. I will link to it in the description for this video. So check the description, click the link, listen to Heath talking about pro ball. It's actually really fun and entertaining. Next up, we have, I don't want to peek inside the hat. We are going to do the Cubs. And here's where we take it back old school, all right? My favorite Cubs player was born in the year 1900. Okay, he had a very long career, almost entirely with the Cubs, played for the New York Giants his very last season. I'm talking about Hall of Fame catcher Gabby Hartnett. Now, this is a guy who was a 6-time All-Star, won the MVP in 1935. I think his best year was 1930. That year, he hit 37 homers, batted .339, and had a 1.034 OPS. 1,034. That's pretty impressive in case you don't know what OPS means, on base plus slugging. Anyway, why am I talking about 1930 and why would I feel such a special connection to Gabby Hartnett? Well, before the 1930 season started, Gabby Hartnett set a world record for catching a baseball dropped from the greatest height. He caught one that was dropped from a blimp, they think about 800 feet high. And there were actually other players prior to that, going back decades into the late 1800s, that had attempted a similar stunt, catching balls dropped off the Washington Monument, off skyscrapers. Babe Ruth supposedly caught a baseball at an Army aviation base dropped out of an airplane. I did research on all this stuff from my last book, The Baseball, and I kept reading about Gabby Hartnett. So I decided to try to break his record. And in 2013, I actually did it thanks to a friend. Shout out to Mike, who's a test flight engineer for the FAA. He got the clearance, found me a helicopter and a pilot. The Lowell Spinners in Massachusetts let me try this stunt at their stadium. And I caught a baseball dropped from a helicopter 1,050 feet high. And that baseball has been sitting right here on the shelf. I don't know if you can read this, but it says 1,050 feet on this Ziploc bag. So, you know, you can talk about all the milestone home runs that I've caught. This baseball is really one of the favorites for me that I've ever caught. And Gabby Hartnett was the inspiration behind this. So I have a whole video about the helicopter stunt on my channel. I'll link to that in the description as well. Lots of fun stuff for you guys to check out. We're gonna keep moving. And you can see, again, why I'm breaking up this video into two parts, because I have a lot to say, baby. All right, next up, we have the Rays. Now, my favorite player ever for the Rays debuted when the team was called the Devil Rays. I am talking about Carl Crawford. Another one of those lefty slap hitter types like Tony Womack. Carl Crawford was electric. He had 8 brilliant seasons in Tampa. 4 of those seasons, he had double digits in doubles, triples, and home runs, which I think is a very impressive statistical feat to even do once. He did it 4 times. In each of those seasons, he stole at least 40 bases. He was the MVP of the 2009 All-Star Game. Just an amazing player. And then, of course, he moved over to Boston and his career went downhill. So I feel like people maybe have a bad memory of him, but early in his career, he was about as good as it got, and I just loved watching him. We move along from there to the Astros, everybody's favorite team. So my favorite player on the Astros was actually drafted by the Mariners. My college girlfriend had a big crush on him. He is quite good looking, I have to admit. Mike Hampton. And you know what? Her crush on him made me like him. It's like, if there's this guy that's getting my girlfriend fired up for baseball for whatever reason, then he's gonna get me fired up too. So we were always talking about Mike Hampton together. In 1999, Mike Hampton went 22-4, okay? Now, shortly thereafter, he ended up moving over to the Rockies, where, let's face it, it's a hitter's paradise, but Mike Hampton could hit wherever he went. As a hitter in the year 2001, in 79 at-bats, he hit 7 home runs. That is a blistering pace. He was a 2-time All-Star. He was a 5-time Silver Slugger, the award for the best hitter at each position in each league. So the man could do it all. And he won 1 Gold Glove in his career, but it was a historic Gold Glove. Greg Maddux had won 13 consecutive Gold Gloves for, best fielding pitcher in the National League. Mike Hampton broke up that streak, and then Greg Maddux won 5 more Gold Gloves after that. So Mike Hampton, I don't think too many people still think about him, but yeah, he was really, really fun and really talented for a while, a number of years ago. All right, we're gonna give this another shake and make sure everything stays nice and at the bottom. And here we go. We're gonna keep it moving. We've done 9 teams so far, so we're gonna do 6 more and then end part 1. So here we have the Marlins, and we have yet another lefty slap hitter, speedster, stole a million bases, more than 600 in his career, Juan Pierre, who debuted with the Rockies, and he had 3 tremendous seasons back with the Marlins when they were called the Florida Marlins. Again, talking about statistical consistency, he played every game consecutively for 5 seasons. I always thought that was cool. He had 4 different seasons in which he had over 200 hits. He was really good. Didn't have the best arm in the outfield, but he could run and chase him down, and just loved his style of play, those big baggy pants that he wore. I met him, had a brief conversation with him in 2018 in Miami at Marlins Park. It was like a players reunion weekend, 25th anniversary of the Marlins World Championship. And yeah, he was cool. I got his autograph on a ticket and just always liked him. So it was nice to connect with him all those years later after that brilliance that he displayed out on the diamond. Next up, we have the Twins of Minneapolis. Now, my favorite Twins player, you can probably guess who it is. It's probably a lot of people's favorite Twins player. Talking about Kirby Puckett. Unfortunately, because of his deteriorating health, his career only lasted 12 years, but he was an all-star in 10 of those seasons, had a .318 lifetime batting average, Hall of Famer, 4 consecutive seasons with at least 200 hits. He was the MVP of the 1993 All-Star Game, and let's just talk about the 1991 World Series for a second, all right? Game 6 in Minnesota, Kirby Puckett made an iconic catch. He drifted back and just made this leaping catch where it's almost like he floated off the ground several feet, caught that ball high up against the plexiglass wall out in left center, saved the game, and then in extra innings, hit a walk-off home run to force a Game 7, which the Twins won. So Kirby was dynamic. I mean, like I said in the first video about all my favorite players, you're going to get sick of me saying like, oh, this guy was fun to watch and he was so much fun. But like, I mean, Kirby, come on, Kirby. Now, another thing, I mentioned that I collected signed ticket stubs. I still do collect them, actually. There was a brief period in time when I was trying to get through the mail autographs, and I mailed a ticket to Kirby, and he signed it and sent it back. You can see it up here on the screen. So, loved him as a player, and then to have that little personal connection with the autograph. I don't think I ever caught a ball that he hit during a game, maybe in batting practice. I don't think he ever threw me a ball either, but yeah, just what a spark plug. Rest in peace. All right, next up, I play a lot of Scrabble, side note, and when you pick tiles in Scrabble, you're supposed to hold the bag above eye level so you can't peek in and see what the letters are. So maybe I should just hold the bag up high and pick another one, which is gonna be the Reds. My favorite player with them, and with a lot of these teams, it's hard to just pick one, especially when a team has such a rich history and there's so many great guys, Hall of Famers. But there's one guy in fairly recent times that I gravitated towards as a fan and loved the prodigious home runs that he hit. I'm talking about Adam Dunn. Now, when you're 6'6" and you weigh 285 pounds, you should hit the ball quite a ways, and the man did it. I would sometimes play him 20 rows back in batting practice, right center field. He was a lefty, but even left center, he'd go oppo and hit these monstrous shots. We got batting practice heroes nowadays like Joey Gallo and Shohei Ohtani. Aaron Judge hits him as far as anybody. But I feel like a decade or so ago, even a little more, Adam Dunn was just the man as far as moonshots. He had 5 consecutive seasons with at least 40 home runs. He hit 46 the first year in that streak, and then hit exactly 40 for the next 4 years after that. So that was a cool statistical oddity. He also walked a ton, and he struck out a ton too. Didn't have the best batting average, so I feel like he's actually an underrated player. Faced a lot of criticism because he just didn't put the ball in play that much, but I would rather have a player who bats .230 and walks 100 times and his on-base percentage is like .360, and that's sometimes what you got with Adam Dunn. I mean, there's a lot of players who go up there hacking and they'll bat like .288 and you're like, yeah, he's great, but you look at his on-base percentage and it's like .319, and if you really think about it, that's not helping the team as much, I don't think, as a guy who just mashes home runs, gets on base a ton. So the big dude that can hit the ball a mile. All right, we have 3 more before we wrap up part 1. And maybe this is the point where I should mention the t-shirt that I'm wearing, as I did pick another one in my hand. But this is one of my own t-shirts from my merch line. So check out zackhample.com/merch if you want to pick up this t-shirt in other colors, other designs, other shirts all together. That's all I have to say about that. And next up, we're going to go with the Angels. So it's time for a little show and tell, as I did in my last video about my favorite current players, because my favorite all-time player is a current player on the Angels. And did you notice this item right here? So this is a bat that was given to me by Mike Trout, who surpassed Cal Ripken Jr. for me as my favorite all-time player ever in the history of baseball. Just to retell the story quickly, I don't want you guys to get sick of it, but I did catch Mike Trout's first career home run in Baltimore in 2011. I gave him that ball after the game. He remembered me. He still remembers me. He follows me on Twitter. But I caught up with him a number of times over the years. He promised me that bat. He delivered. He's just such a nice guy. And I talked about all that in the last favorite player video. But let me just throw some numbers at you. Ready for this? Mike Trout, well, first of all, was the Rookie of the Year, his first full season. He's won 3 MVPs. He has finished first or second in the MVP voting every year in the major leagues, except for one when he was injured and finished 4th and still had a monster season, but just didn't quite play enough games to get all the votes. He's also been an all-star every single full season in the major leagues. His career OPS is exactly 1,000. Look it up, 1.000. And I feel like that number is only going to go up from here for a long, long time. So for many, many reasons, baseball greatness, statistical greatness, how friendly he is, catching his first homer, the bat. He signed an autograph for me, actually a few over the years. You can see one on a ticket right here that I got in Tampa. Mike Trout, far and away my favorite player, and he's the only guy that I'm including in both of these favorite player videos. Favorite current Angel, favorite all-time Angel, boom. All right, next up we have the Braves. This gives me a chance to talk about one of the best pitchers in Major League history. Yes, Greg Maddux. Now, I was a Mets fan growing up, and yet I liked Greg Maddux so much that whenever the Braves played the Mets, and I was watching them on TV and watching Maddux on TV, I was rooting for him all the way. That was really the beginning of the end of me considering myself a Mets fan. And because so many people are still confused and still accuse me of being a Yankee fan just because I have a season ticket there, let me say again, I do not have a favorite team. That's why I wear this hat in most of my videos. Anyway, Greg Maddux. He won 4 consecutive Cy Young Awards. He was an 8-time All-Star and won 18 Gold Gloves, interrupted by Mike Hampton that one season. That's the most Gold Gloves that any player has ever won at any position. He won 355 games. He's pitched over 5,000 innings, and he's 4th all-time in games started. So, wow. He also threw me a ball about 20 years ago in Atlanta, which was pretty cool. That's my one personal connection to him. He was, again, here's where I say it. You're going to laugh at me for saying it again, but so fun to watch. He was an artist on the mound. Late in his career, I don't even think he could throw 90 miles an hour. Maybe he could if he really tried, but he was in the mid to upper 80s on his fastballs, and yet he fooled everybody and kept guys guessing and off balance. He threw a tailing fastball. He was a right-handed pitcher. So if you can picture a left-handed batter up at bat, Maddux would throw the ball sort of in off the plate, a few inches, right at the guy's knees. And the lefty would kind of back up because he thought it was going to be an inside pitch. Maybe he even thought it was going to tail in and hit him in the shins. Well, the lefty batter would back up, and then that ball would tail right over the corner of the plate. And he did the same thing with righties. I mean, he'd throw it in the same spot where he'd start at 3 inches off the plate, and the batter would just give up on it, and then it would tail back over, called strike 3. He would pitch complete games in under 100 pitches, semi-regularly. He worked fast. Games are often closer to 2 hours rather than 3 hours when he was on the hill. It's unbelievable what he did, and he was doing this in the steroid era, a hitter's era, and just dominating. So Greg Maddux is far and away my choice for my favorite Braves player. And the last one that we're gonna do here in part 1 of my favorite players video is the Indians. Now, this is another interesting one. My pick, my guy, is in the Hall of Fame. See if you can think about who I'm talking about. I bet you can't. It's in the Hall of Fame. He had over 3,500 career hits. And he was born in 1888. Ha ha! You didn't think I'd go that far back in time, did you? With all due respect to Francisco Lindor, who's amazing and I love him, I'm going with Tris Speaker as my favorite Indians player of all time. Now, he debuted in 1907 with Boston. Fun fact, before the Red Sox were called the Red Sox, they were called the Americans. So Tris Speaker debuted for the Boston Americans in 1907, got a great start to his career there, then moved over to Cleveland, and in a case of like, oh, hi, nice to meet you, batted .386 in his first season there. Talk about making a good first impression. I think the coolest thing about Tris Speaker, and by the way, he had a .345 career batting average. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. He has the record for most career doubles, 792. He led the league in doubles 8 different times. And here's another fun fact. His final full season in the majors, he had 523 at-bats. Guess how many times he struck out in 523 at-bats? It was a single-digit number. He struck out 8 times in a full season. And if you're thinking like, oh, well, this is a guy that, like hit a bunch of doubles, just a simple little contact hitter. He had 5 different seasons in which he had an OPS over 1,000. And yeah, the numbers were different then. Guys weren't striking out as much, and there were... Anyway, I don't have to get into the evolution of baseball, but his stats, just flipping through them in the baseball encyclopedia, always blew me away. 792 doubles? That's basically hitting 40 doubles a year for 20 years. Huh. And yet I almost feel like that record is breakable. Like Cy Young with over 500 complete games, no one's gonna break that record, but someone could hit 800 doubles in a career. It could happen. Anyway, Tris Speaker's the man for now, and that concludes part 1 of my favorite all-time players video. I know it's been long, but I hope it's been fun, and if you check the description, you will not only find what I'm looking at the teams to remind myself, the link to Heath Bell's podcast. I think I also told you to check out my helicopter video. You can check out my merch. I'll throw the link there. And you will find, once I post it, a link to part 2 of my favorite players video. So for now, I will say goodbye and tune into part 2 because there's a lot more guys to talk about. Thanks for watching.